Los Angeles, a city of fame, fortune, and murder.
Los Angeles, the city of angels and demons, home to the most notorious murders in American history. From the Wonderland killings to the Freeway Killer, these were crimes that turned Hollywood dreams into nightmares. We're talking with a man who's seen it all, legendary LAPD homicide detective and co-author of The Dirty Business of Murder.
We had called it the serial killer capital of the world.
Every other day, they were finding a body.
It never happened anywhere else in the world in history. We had 15, 20 serial killers, unrelated to each other, all operating at the same time. It was March of '72, and it was one of the first cases I handled. We had a crowd of probably 6,000 people with a in public view. Most of the murders we handled had something to do with narcotics. I think the biggest shock of that case was the intensity of the brutality. It was almost unnecessary to do that to somebody. Somebody with a lead pipe, that's usually enough, but they just kept going.
The fact that nobody actually did time for murder is high as you can get on the list as possible. It's unbelievable.
Bonin would pick up hitchhikers as young as 12 or 13, drag them in the van, tie them up, and then strangle them and then dump the bodies around LA near freeways.
So did you know, Bob, that was connected to those other freeway killings? Los Angeles, a city of fame, fortune, and murder. Today we're going inside the real crimes that helped define this city. The Freeway Killer, the man who chased this sadistic killer down and brought him to justice. The Wonderland Murders. He was involved in this case with Tom Lange and a couple maybe you haven't heard of. The Leather Jacket Murders and the Pen Pal Murders. This is a fascinating episode of Tom Zenner Scandal right here on the Tom Zenner Scandal YouTube. This is 1 Degree of Scandalous with the one and only Kato Kaelin. And Kato, wow, do we have a treat today?
Tom, that's why I've never had a pen pal. I never will have a pen pal ever. I don't trust pen pals.
Well, you get a lot of mail, you just don't return it, right? Because
Exactly.
You never know who's mailing Kato Kaelin. And you know, we've talked about our guest who we're going to have here. It's Tom Lange's longtime partner, another legendary OG detective with LAPD, Robbery and Homicide Division, Bob Souza. And he wrote the book with Tom Lange, The Dirty Business of Murder. And he was all over these cases. I know our audience is going to love this conversation today.
You know, obviously we talked to Bob beforehand. I think people are just going to love this guy. It's just you can just tell that he knows his stuff. Yeah. And working with Lange, you know, I just want to hear stories of what they were like driving in their car and what their car was, and all that stuff. It really interests me.
You gave me a little nugget. We're going to get right into the interview, but give me that nugget. Don't any more detail. But another thing about Bob that we're going to talk about today. Another part of his background.
He's Mr. Hollywood too. He had a movie, and I'll mention one actor that's in it. Can I?
Yeah.
Harrison Ford. So this is not a B. This is an A film. A film.
All right. Well, Bob, we've spent a lot of hours with your old partner Tom Lange here in the studio, and it's a pleasure to have you on location. We won't give it away, but it looks like a beautiful day there, like the Dodger Blue celebrating our world championship. But welcome to the show, Bob, and let's get started with Wonderland. I think we'll start with this one.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. Tom's told me a lot about both of you guys, so I'm ready to go.
And this is a treat. And you know, Bob, let's just talk about that one because it's famous, it's infamous on so many levels. It was the first one that was ever videotaped. You and Tom Lange busted the video camcorder out of the trunk. But what was it like when you walked onto the street, Wonderland Drive, and what was your first reaction when you got there?
And to add to that, Tom, what was that as part of your investigation? What homicide case was this? Your second, your 50th, your first? So when you see this murder,
early 80s. You're a veteran detective at this point.
It was the 4th of July weekend in '81, and no, I'd been around a while. I'd worked Hollywood Homicide, and I was at Robbery Homicide for quite a while, and I don't know, it would have been my 50th murder, maybe. I don't know. But it was the first time Tom and I had worked together. And it just turned out we were both up on call. And it was the 4th of July weekend. And I was home. And I got the call. And they said, hey, your partner's on the way. You got a quadruple murder up in Hollywood Hills. Well, the unique thing about it was that when Tom and I left that day, when we parted company at the office, I said, you know, Tom, with our luck, we're going to get a triple axe murder in Hollywood Hills this weekend. Screw up our whole 4th of July weekend. Well, then we get a quadruple instead. But when I arrived there, I was listening to the tactical frequencies all the way there. I heard there were helicopters, and I knew all the news people were there. Tom got there before I did. And when I pulled up, I just double parked. I mean, there was no room on the street because of the news cams and what have you. But I got out of the car. I saw Tom. He was standing on the sidewalk talking to one of the Hollywood guys. Had his sleeves rolled up, his clipboard in his hand. I said, "Oh, it's serious now." So I walked up. I said, "What do we got, Tom?" He says, "You're not going to believe it." He says, "Get your galoshes out."
That is such a famous line.
Get your galoshes out. It's just going to be nothing but blood.
And Kato, think about it. This is the first time you two are paired together. You and Tom Lange. This is it. Like you obviously knew each other, but you're working this one together.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had never worked together, but we were friends. We knew each other. We worked the same office, and I knew Tom by reputation. I knew he was a top-notch detective, so I wasn't too concerned about being paired up with a dummy. You know, it was all that part was good. So when I said, Tom, I said, "This isn't going to screw up our 4th of July weekend, is it?" And that's when his game face came on, and I said, "No, this isn't time for jokes." So anyway, he walked me through, and it was just the goriest, bloodiest crime scene I had ever seen. And I'd seen a lot of really bad stuff, but there were bodies all over the house. There was blood splatter. And even when Tom and I were walking through the first walkthrough, we said, this is not an everyday case. This is a get back murder. Somebody's looking for revenge. It was so brutal. The beating of these people was way beyond what it took to, cause death. One of the victims, her was crushed. Her whole head was fat from the crush. Just all she had was a face. And we saw all the narcotics paraphernalia, so we knew it was a drug case, and we figured it was a dope ripoff or some kind of a revenge. And that's when we started. And Tom had the idea. He said, "We've got scientific investigation. We call them SID." He says they're here. They got a video camera, but it's a big bulky thing back in the day. Didn't have a little handheld thing or on your phone. It was this big thing. You had to have cables, and so we got them to set everything up. And Tom walked through, and I took care of all the exterior stuff that had to be done. The neighborhood canvas and all that. Interviewed some witnesses while he was doing that. But it was the first time crime scene had ever been taped. First time it had ever been used in court, which turned out to be priceless as far as evidence.
Landmark.
Landmark. And when a jury sees that, now you can really relate. It's not like a still photograph. This is movement. So yeah, it was that part worked out really well. But the case, little did we know, we'd still be messing around with it 20 years later.
40.
40 years. When you go into a house that's got quadruple homicide, do you immediately think when you see something like you said, drug paraphernalia and weapons and the head crushed skull? Do you ever think of looking at evidence like, well, that looks like it might have been planted, these drugs? That looks like they're trying to get your scent off of a crime scene, like a criminal's trying to put something in there that will, make you guys think like, well, what's this all about?
I think, well, that's always possible, but this looked to me, and being experienced with a lot of drug paraphernalia, what have you, everything was where it would be for a heroin addict or just there were pills all over the floor. It was more like a ransacking or done in a rush. No, I didn't. We never had that impression that anything was planned. It looked like a dope ripoff from the beginning, but that was what was strange about it, was because of the violence involved and what it took.
Sounds like you got a K9 unit there too.
Pardon me?
Sounds like there's a K9 unit at your house.
Yeah, I do have a name. This is my friend's house I'm at.
That's for me, Kato K9.
Yeah.
There you go.
Oh,
I know all about Kato through Tom, so I hear you guys are pretty good friends.
Right? You got all. Oh, there you go. You got your notes. Perfect.
That's great.
I don't
Tom's
know if that'll
great.
cover it.
Tom and I had so much fun.
Oh man, let me pivot back to the most brutal crime scene ever. But Bob, everybody talks about the brutality, the chaos. Then you're talking about drugs, scattered. So this isn't a crime of passion, right? This isn't intended victims. This is a hit. Does that make your job easier when you can? Okay, we know these are some serious thugs. They're very pissed off about something. There's a reason they came here. Is that a starting point that you usually don't have in a murder scene like this?
Yeah, I think right from the beginning, we felt that it was a revenge, a get-back murder. And so we knew, because of this house, we had there were narcotics units and other people that had been investigating this house. So we knew it was a drug house. We knew there had been people coming in and out of there. We hadn't even really dug in yet. We were at the crime scene for almost 36 hours, and there was so much to process, and we did a lot of talking about it. And of course, it was a day later we got the big break, which I don't know if Tom's ever talked about it, but I'm sure he has. The phone call from a witness who was actually knew what happened.
Yeah.
That just broke the.
Can you talk about that, like who got the call, and then just the charge of energy that I had to give you? I suppose your first thing is it legit, right? Is that the first thing you're thinking?
Yeah, at first when it came in, we thought, yeah, sure. We always get dozens of clues on a case, but we were sitting in the office and a call came in, and Tom answered it, and it was a guy named Fat Howard, and Fat Howard said, "Hey, I know something about that case up there on Wonderland," and I said, "I have a guy who knows exactly what happened. So where's this guy?" He said, "Well, he's at the house now." We said, "What?" So we jumped in our cars and jammed up there. Our lieutenant followed us, and we get there and walk up to the door, guns drawn. We didn't know what he had. And here's David Lind, a biker, who we didn't know from Adam. He's on the floor, and he's picking up pills and shoving them in his pockets. And there were hundreds of pills all over the floor, all kinds of, there was Red Devils, just you name a narcotic that was there.
He's at the crime scene. I'm sorry, I'm making sure I get this right. He's at the crime scene picking up pills.
Yeah, he tore off the
police cross, the line, tape.
Yeah, he tore off the police tape and went in. And so I drew down on him, and he just ignored me at first. And so I kind of reached out and I hit him on the back, and I had my gun out. And then Tom moved real quick. We got him down and cuffed him, and we took him into Hollywood Station. And he just laid the whole thing out to us, about Eddie Nash, and it had to be Nash. And at first, he thought it was his girlfriend was the one who survived, when it wasn't.
So his girlfriend died, right?
Pardon me?
His girlfriend died, was killed?
His girlfriend was killed.
That was that had to be Flatface, the girl.
It was all over the news that one of the victims had survived. And he thought it was his girlfriend. Well, when Tom told him, he went berserk and jumped up. Our lieutenant took his fighting stance, and I was pretty relaxed about it. But he jumped up and he was just angry. I said, "Sit down, David." And he's sitting down. And he's got all these pills. He keeps pulling them out of his pocket and putting them on the table, and he's popping them one by one. He's throwing them in his mouth, and he's a little bit, he's losing it. I can see that. But Tom and I, we could almost read each other's minds from the get-go. And we said, let him go. Let him do his thing, and we'll get some information out of him. So he started telling us the whole story about how they had robbed Ed Nash. And he thought that Ed Nash sent his henchmen over to do the murder. He laid everything out for us. So we, within about a day and a half, we knew exactly what had happened, and that's when the case kind of took a whole new turn as far as our investigation.
So this David Lynn was lucky that he wasn't at that place at that time, because it seems like
he wasn't there. He was actually up. I think he was up in Sacramento on some kind of a warrant arrest. He had left his girlfriend there at the house, and along with the other victims.
Wow!
But it was such an in-depth investigation. It's hard to know where to start, when you think about the intricacies of the robbery at Ed Nash's house and how pissed off he was, as we found out later, at John Holmes and that whole situation. It was pretty amazing.
Yeah, they messed with the wrong guy, Eddie Nash. I mean, there was obviously going to be payback. I mean, they humiliated him. They stole his money. They stole his drugs. And this guy was a bad hombre, man. There was going to be some payback. It's absolutely incredible. It's almost like a gift from the heavens when something like that happens for you, where you literally show up. Someone has penetrated a crime scene, which is a crime. So you got him on that. And then his girlfriend was killed, so he's going to want to talk. Right. And did you get the name John Holmes out of him? Did that surface at that point?
Yeah, that was part of his whole conversation. Big thing with Holmes. He felt Holmes was involved in one way or another. And that was, I always call those my Scooby-Doo moments, Yeah. It just opened everything for us. And there was no reason not to believe him. And everything he said made sense to us. He was a badass himself. He was a biker and rode with the Hells Angels. And I think I kind of I kind of struck up a camaraderie with him because I grew up in Sacramento, and he hung around in Sacramento, and we knew a lot of the same people. I'd grown up with a bunch of guys who eventually joined the Hells Angels. I started throwing names at him. He said, "Hey, I know Snappo, I know Springtime," and so that immediately gave me a kind of a bond with.
Right,
with,
and he'll open up more.
Yeah, he did. He was very, very upfront with us.
I went to college in Stockton. That's not far from Sacramento.
No, not far.
I didn't join any street gangs or biker gangs. I could have, though. I could have.
Tom's gang name was Summertime.
Stockton's a tough place, man.
Stockton is a port town now.
Yep, that's a rough town, Cato.
I know. No,
Stockton,
I've been to Stockton. And Modesto and all those places.
Yeah,
Cato, stay out of Stockton, man. You don't want to go there.
Cato, you need protection. You need me up there, former UOP Tiger, to protect you.
Just the Dow stocks. That's it.
Hey, Bob. So this case had everything: porn, drugs, the whole Hollywood underbelly. John Holmes, incredible violence. How exposed to that kind of thing had you been up at that point? Have you done crimes that involved it? This was a confluence of all of it, but you got a full taste of just a toxic mix of everything that can be lethal in Hollywood when you got the wrong players involved.
Oh, it was a 32 crayon box. This was, we had it all. But the strange thing was, in those days, we call it the cocaine salad days. Most of the murders we handled had something to do with narcotics, one way or another. So that part wasn't too unusual. I think the biggest shock of that case was the intensity of the brutality. It was almost unnecessary to do that, to kill somebody. That's what kind of always stuck in my mind. You hit somebody with a lead pipe, that's usually enough, but they just kept going. I mean, it was and the amount of blood. You got 5 bodies basically.
Yeah, that's nothing we can comprehend, because seasoned detectives are saying it's the worst crime scene maybe they've ever been on.
Get your galoshes on, kind of a tip right there to how gruesome it is. And you know what? Years later, they did the film with Val Kilmer. Years later, that was Tom. Was that called Wonderland? Right?
Yeah, it was horrible.
As a detective, though, and even though it's the years that it happened, do you go in there regardless of anything and know in your mind like this that we're walking into, this is a movie. This is going to be something one day. Does that thought even cross your mind? I know what you've done before. We'll talk about later. But does that ever cross your mind that you're in the Hollywood Hills? It's, incredibly affluent area, Wonderland. And you've got to walk. Any detective's got to walk in and go, my God, this is a film. This is a movie. What we're going through, telling Tom Lange. Well,
I think either I said it or Tom said it. At the time, you can't write this shit. So yeah, we knew that
it is amazing.
The immensity of this thing. I wasn't surprised when they made the movie. They sent Tom and I both the script, and they actually used our names in the script. But it was so bad, and so they left out so many important factors. They said, no, we can't be involved in this. And we sent it back, and then they changed their names, and they kind of capitalized on what everybody did, with John Holmes being the pornos.
Yeah, that was the hook.
But there was so much more to it. There was graft and corruption in Los Angeles that we'd never seen before.
Yeah.
So all that kind of played into this, and that made the case so involved. Tom and I were being investigated for being on Nash's payroll, and all these things that went on, they didn't even discuss in the movie. And the amazing thing to me was, knowing feature films like I know now, the cast was amazing.
Yeah, it was.
You can't beat the cast they had for that movie. But I just think that they missed all the important part of the story. I really.
And you're being investigated in case you have a connection with Nash. You guys got to be pissed off.
Plus he had a history of paying off judges and witnesses too.
Right.
Know?
But even to consider that, it's kind of like, what are you talking about? That pissed me off. F you.
You know what, guys? That's exactly why Tom and I wrote the book. Tom called me one day. He says, "Hey, I'm kind of sick of all this shit on the radio, on the TV." He says, "Half the people that are talking about this case weren't even born when this thing happened." He says, why don't we write the real story?" I said, "Let's do it." And that's how it started.
That is such a great story. The fact that A, you thought of it, B, you got all the details and all the facts in the files, and C, you're good enough writers to do it and get it done. That's amazing. You got a day job, which is, a huge job, and thank you for all the great work you did in your career. But to think that you could even find time, but it was probably a release for you too, right? Almost to like get your mind off maybe some of the cases, even though the gruesome details of this thing.
Instead of seeing, just write murder, don't see it.
Well, it was a lot of years later, and the strange thing about it was that Tom and I were out to dinner long after we wrote the book, and we were talking, and I said, Tom, you know how I used to disappear sometimes when we were out having a few drinks? I might be gone for 15 or 20 minutes. I was sitting in a stall in the restaurant, and I'm making notes, because if we drank too much, I'd forget things. So I was writing down stuff so I wouldn't forget it.
Oh, yeah.
And Tom looked at me, and he said, I did the same thing.
Oh, my God.
Well, that's how we were able to write the book, because we had notes, and we were able to go back, over 45 years. And we had a lot of this written down in it. And I have what I call a color file. I have a 4-drawer filing cabinet just with ideas and stuff that happened to me while I was on the job, cases. And
I did the same thing. My book in the bathroom, in the stall. My book was called Irritable Bowel. So it's a book you don't want to read.
Incredible.
It's incredible, right?
Hey, Malice in Wonderland. I mean, almost the same title they used for the movie too, wasn't it?
Yeah, Tom came up with that title. I said, yeah, I love it. Let's do it. The only problem, so many Malice in Wonderlands because of obviously, but
there's so many unbelievable elements of this. And by the way, we're going to talk about the Freeway Killer next, which Bob was directly involved in. This is one of the worst serial killers we've had here. We've had a lot of bad ones, double digits. Yep. Horrific what he did off the freeways. We're going to get to that in a second.
Yeah.
But Bob, there's so many unbelievable elements about Wonderland. The fact that nobody actually did time for murder is maybe as high as you can get on the list as possible. It's unbelievable.
As close as it got was Eddie Nash. In order to have a RICO prosecution, you have to have 3 major felonies. And they used our murder as one of those. And they used arson, and I forget what the third one was, but they were able to at least convict Nash of that. But it was a shame. But the jury was bought off on one of the cases on Nash. He paid off a judge, paid off a jury.
Oh my God, that's just
he tried to pay Tom and I off. He offered us $250,000 each if we'd help him get out of his drug cases.
I mean, you talk about no shame, right? I mean, how does he do that? Does he call you on a burner phone? Does he meet you somewhere? Does someone as a henchman give you the message?
We were just outside the courtroom in the courthouse, and his attorney was standing 20 feet away. And he came over and he says, "Hey guys, what's it going to take to make this go away?" I said, "What are you talking about, Ed?" He said, "How about $250,000 each?" I said, "Yeah, we'll think about it." And that was the end of that. But we thought about being wired up and going back to him. This is what Tom and I talked about.
Yeah, I was just going to say that.
We'll get wired, come back. But I know Nash was so clever that if we'd done that and walked back and said, "Yeah, that offer you made," he'd have made it sound like we were shaking him down.
Yeah,
and it would have been on tape.
Yep.
And we told the DA, we talked to the DA about it. He said, "No, let's leave that alone, guys, because that's what's going to happen."
Do you think Nash, with this gruesome killing that went on, do you think that there were other killings he had probably done that were, never reported or never associated with him? But
yeah, I believe so, because of the heavy narcotic world he was involved in. I'm sure there was. Well, we did have Dominic. What was his name? We did have an overdose in his house. Still have doubts that could have been a murder.
And that biker gang, these weren't good dudes. I mean, they were involved in homicides. I mean, they were professional criminals, right? And violent criminals. And when you get them,
they weren't sympathetic. They weren't sympathetic victims.
Yeah.
I mean, they were all nasty drug dealers and ex-cons, and the worst was Ron Lanius. His wife's the one who survived, but Lanius was he was an evil guy. I mean, he was a contract killer. His wife, I spent a lot of time with her in the hospital. She told me stories about him. I mean, it just blew my mind. I'll tell you a real short story. They went down to Mexico, score some dope, and she's with him, and they wanted more money. He said, "Wait a minute, we made a deal," and they said, "No, we changed our mind. So you better get some more money." And he said, "Okay, let's go, honey." And so and they kept his wife. They said, "No, we're keeping her till you come back with more money." So he had to go back across the border, went and got some more money, came back. And came in and he killed, I think 2 or 3 of them. Killed them, took his wife, and they went back to the States. That was his style.
I mean, that's a shakedown. That
was that cartel he killed, or just a dope dealer?
I'm working everything in Mexico's cartel. So
right. Yeah, I mean, could you imagine that? I mean, that guy took no prisoners, right? And he rescued his wife. Maybe that's why she stuck with him through all of it, right?
Yeah, and he had no fear. I mean, he went to a party she told me about with a bunch of Mexican mafia, and they're at this party, and this badass Mexican mafia guy comes up and says, "Hey, what are you doing here, white boy?" And Melania smoked a pipe, and this guy's got a gun and it's pointing at his chest, and Lanius takes his pipe and he knocks the tobacco out on the barrel of the gun. Says, "What are you going to do from here, Vato?" Cool as a cucumber. He had no fear of anything.
The guy probably respected him more after that move.
Wow. Yeah. So think about it. It takes a lot of guts to go rob Eddie Nash, right? So this guy's fearless. So they go in there. John Holmes opens the door and boom, take what you want. And you got 4 more days to live. What was it? 2 days later when they took him out?
Yeah.
Yeah. They posed as cops. Went in. Dave Lynn ended up shooting his bodyguard, shot him in the ass. So, yeah, that was a real cluster in there. Let me tell you, that robbery. But they did get away with a lot of money, a lot of dope.
Yeah. Hey, I forgot the name of the bodyguard, but obviously he got shot, as you said, shot in the ass. But he was part of the murders, wasn't he? He was over there.
Greg Giles, we think he was one of the murders.
Yeah, he was the guy swinging the lead pipe for sure. And then Tom told us about the palm print on the bed too that belonged to John Holmes. So you knew he was there.
A big clue. So you're talking to Leonis's wife, but she was beat up badly, right?
Yeah, she. Well, I'll put it this way: she survived, and her neurosurgeon Miles Saunders was just a genius at Cedars. He told me, he says, if you took a raw egg and you dropped it from the roof, and what you have left on the sidewalk is about what was left of her skull, and they had steel plate, very little. In fact, when I transported her back home, she still had steel plate in her, and she had to wear a helmet on the plane when I took her back. And it was a miracle that she lived. And actually, she had a little bit of a limp, and her speech was pretty clear. And I heard she married a doctor, but I don't know.
I think she ended up testifying too.
Well, she definitely testified.
Yeah, I mean, to think of that amount of brain damage and your fracture, and like you described it with the egg, I mean, how you survived that? Would you even want to? I mean, my God.
Not just survival, but she got all the way to the point where she said, "I remember these big dark figures coming at me with something shiny or metallic in their hands." I mean, to remember that. Now remember, she's loaded on heroin, passed out, and we brought her back that far just through conversations. I thought that was amazing that she even had, and it was dark. I mean, for her to get that close to being able to identify somebody, to me, it was miraculous.
They obviously thought she was dead, too. I mean,
oh yeah, the guys were stepping over her. There were druggers coming over there, stealing stuff out of the house. She was still groaning. She was still alive.
Yeah, we actually went there. We did an episode right in front of the house, and you know how it is. There's still an eerie vibe there. If you know the case as well as we do, and you know what happened, you could just see those people walking in on the side entrance or wherever they came in, with the damage that they were going to inflict, carrying these pipes, and then walking out and going on with their day. So, wow, that was great, man. Your perspective, your memory is just unbelievable. We got 3 more cases we're going to talk about, all that Bob was directly involved with. One is a very famous one, the Freeway Killer, William Bonin. Okay, we go for some pretty bad dudes to an even worse dude, if that's even possible.
Yeah, and we'll talk about that, Tom, with the other 3 others, actually. Bonin was one, and 2 others were part of it. I think Bob will mention, were part of the Freeway Killers, as one of them still today. Yeah. Is still on death row. We'll get into.
Well, Randy Kraft is another one of those freeway killers. But
there were 3 of them. Yeah.
Yep, and the one you were directly involved in, William Bonin, right?
Yeah, Bonin. We had tracked the one before him. I think was Kraft. St. John. We were tracking because we were worried that there was going to be in fact, we just knew we're going to have a case sometime in the city. Most of these were outside the city. So when he was picked up,
they were in the Orange County area, right?
Yeah, a lot of Orange County.
Just for context, I think Randy Kraft was with the original one, and this is the guy that was discharged from the Marines because he came out as gay, right? Isn't that's the backstory with Randy Kraft? So he was and most of his victims were military, and he's the guy that had the scorecard up to like 67 murders. He had the numbers in his trunk. So
yeah, the scorecard killer. Yeah,
yeah, and then it, like Kato said, the Bonin, and he picked it up. So that's what you were saying, that you thought eventually they're going to come into LA County. Right.
Yeah. And Bonin did. We had a chart that we were on. We had a task force, and we were involved with the LA County sheriffs and several satellite departments around the city. And we had a chart. And originally it was the Los Angeles homosexual killer. And we had like 45 or 50 victims with MOs that varied. So we knew we had more than one, but there was a lot of overlapping. It was complicated, to say the least, and we were trying to isolate by method of operation, and even that was tough because there's similarities with all three of these guys. So, and one of them started way back in the '60s, you know. So, yeah, that was a very complex case. But my involvement got serious when we got a case in LA and the Bonin case, basically.
So did you know right away, Bob, that that was connected maybe with this chart or with, you know, the similar MO of some of these other freeway killings, the one that you got assigned to?
Oh, I believe Bonin's cases were on that chart, absolutely. And you know, when you compare these guys, or you compare them to the Wonderland killers, even the governor said that Bonin, he could be the poster child for serial killers. I mean, he was one of the most evil that we ever dealt with.
For the viewers, tell them what the Bonin would do.
Bonin would pick up hitchhikers. They weren't all gay. Some of them were straight kids. In fact, one was as young as, I think, 12 or 13, hitchhiking to Disneyland. But he'd pick up hitchhikers, drag them in the van. He would control them, tie them up. He would use their own T-shirt to strangle them with, and he'd rape them, and then strangle them to death, and then dump the bodies around LA near freeways.
And you know what? We had the toolbox killer. We had other freeway killers. We had the scorecard killer. I mean, there's several of these happening almost at the same time.
It was incredible. Yeah, no doubt.
Bob, always with vans too.
Yeah, a lot of vans because you had a lot of hitchhikers back then and you didn't have cameras on the freeway. But Bob, what was it like working? The fear in the city, showing up at the station every day, wondering if there's going to be a new one connected to it. I mean, could you remember just the vibe and just how horrific that had to be for parents and just anybody?
I do, because of my family. I had two sons that were close to the age of Bonin's victims, for one. So that made it very personal for me. But our office was, it was like organized chaos. There would be one case. I had Bonin. One of my good friends was handling the Hillside case, the Hillside Strangler with the women. I had just handled a case for a lot of elderly women, the West Side Rapist. And I mean, it just was going on and on and on for like almost 15 years. We had this, called it the serial killer capital of the world. Right. It had never happened anywhere else in the world in history, and it's never happened since. We had as many as, I think at one time, 15 or 20 serial killers, unrelated to each other, all operating at the same time. And you mentioned the toolbox killers. That was Bittaker and Norris. And I interviewed Bittaker at the county jail, trying to get ideas of how serial killers thought. Because we didn't have the FBI. We didn't have profilers. We never saw an FBI agent. So it was all brand new to us. And the interesting thing about it was senior detectives, guys that had 20, 30 years on the job, we were on a level playing field because they'd never seen serial killers like this. So it was all, they called us the young lions because we dug in. And most of us were younger guys handling these cases. And the older guys were retiring. A lot of them were World War II veterans, you know. And they'd never seen anything like this. And they really didn't want all the overtime and all the pressure that went with these cases. And so it got to be a young detective crowd who was handling these cases.
Can you imagine you're living in LA, you're living there, you move there, and you got 15 serial killers, and you know that you're moving there, and you know this is going on, especially if you have kids. Because I remember that even though it was in LA, my mom and dad, they would be so upset and said, anytime we went out, don't you dare hitchhike. Yeah. Don't you dare hitchhike. I just remember that in our head. Don't you? And of course we did.
And then a few years later, you have Richard Ramirez. So last week we had an FBI profiler, Jim Clemente, who was awesome, right? He's one of the OG. He's great. And I asked him the same question, and he said, yeah, they go into prisons and interview some of these sadistic killers, to try to, pick their brain, just kind of see if it'll help solve other cases or prevent ones. So when you talk to Bittaker, the toolbox killer, he was in prison because he got arrested fairly quickly, thank God. So did you literally interview Bittaker about the case you were working on, the Freeway Killer Bonin?
No, we tried to interview Bittaker. He wouldn't talk to us. Norris was already snitching to the sheriffs about Bittaker, who was his crime partner. And so when I heard about that, I called the sheriffs and said, you mind if we talk to your guy? And they said, no, have at it. So when we went to the jail, Norris was such a relaxed, here's a guy is in jail for 7, 8 murders, I guess it was. And he was so matter of fact, like you and I would talk about where we're going to have lunch the next day. He told us things about, which really did help in our case. A lot of what he told me kind of panned out. He said, you're looking for a guy that probably has a partner to control these people he's picking up. He had read everything about Bonnet in the paper. So I was careful about that. I didn't want him feeding back information that he had read in the newspaper. So I wanted to hear more personal shit from him. And so he started getting into how he and Larry worked in there. They called it the McDeath van, they called it. And he said, you're probably looking for a guy who probably works with a partner, probably using a van with a side door that slides. He says that way they can pull up right to a bus bench or a hitchhiker, and cars from the front and back can't see a door open with a slide. They pull somebody in, slope the door, and they're gone. He says you're probably looking for a guy who's picking them up in one location, taking them somewhere, and then dumping them in another location. And the things he was telling us, he said he and Bittaker, they would actually go up to these fire roads that have locks on them, by the fire department. And they would cut the locks off and put their own locks on there so they could get in to dump their bodies.
I mean, that's a wealth of information. Do you have to offer him anything? Do you have to negotiate? Hey, if you talk to me, you get a little bit better treatment or something. Do they ask for anything? Or are they looking to get it off their back?
No, I think he's lucky I didn't put a bullet in his brain because I was tempted.
Oh, I imagine just got to be fuming.
He didn't ask for anything, and we didn't offer. When we walked out, I told my partner, I said, you ever felt more like a drink in your life? Because he told us, originally he said, I don't want to talk about the cases I'm in jail for. We said, okay, we'll honor that. But I want to ask you about general stuff. And then he just went off on this tangent, started telling us details of these young victims. And, they're recording the torture.
Yeah, the toolbox killers were recording it. I mean,
yeah, and it was played in court. People were running out of the courtroom, and these are a couple of really evil guys. Yeah. Norris was just wide open with us. He didn't hold anything back, as far as I could see.
Were the parents of the 12-year-olds, 13-year-olds, were they part in the courtroom of the playing of these videos, or were these kids more transient?
Yeah, and even the detectives were having a hard time because it was such an emotional thing, to hear these blood-chilling screams. When these guys are using pliers, and it was just horrendous.
Tom and I are probably, I'm getting like the goosebump like that. Are you kidding me?
I mean, you can't even make this up. And they got pleasure out of doing this, and it's just like, and Bob, you've talked to these people, Bonin, these guys in prison to get information about other serial killers. Is there a common line? Where do they go wrong? How do you get to this point where you're torturing kids, killing them, dumping them? Did you feel like they knew about each other, some of these other serial killers, and were following each other and measuring themselves against each other?
I think they're all independently screwed up mentally. And there's three indicators of antisocial behavior: fire setting, cruelty to animals, and bedwetting. What bedwetting has to do with it, I don't know. But this is psychiatric information. Oh. And it seems like they all had that similar cruelty to animals. That's where it starts as little kids. And I don't know where they go wrong. Something's not wired right. But I don't know if they have anything in common, if they follow other people. And this is, before the internet, before
right.
all these.
This is, so it's not a good sign for me. It's just because I used to be a bedwetter, but Bob, I used to do it from the hallway.
Hey, Bob, should I take protection? I mean, he's already identified one of these three things that you
mentioned.
Animals.
I love animals.
Holy crap!
Has he lit a fire in the stage?
Yes, he has. As a matter of fact, I think he has.
No,
where were you last January?
I'm always on fire. That's it.
Oh my God! I mean, this is gallows humor.
I'm going to tell Tom to keep an eye on you, Kato.
Yeah, good man. He's a good man.
Oh man, Bob. Like you said, you didn't have the tools that they have now. Right. And this probably gave serial killers advantages. There's no freeways. There's no DNA. There's no database. There's no right.
Yeah. No cell phones, no computers. We were using hand-drawn charts. We made up our own matrix charts. We had nothing to feed information into. We had to figure it out ourselves.
Pure instincts and intelligence and experience.
The serial killers back then, the perversion that they have, they're thinking, we'll never get caught. There's nothing. There's no. They don't, the technology we have today. They're probably thinking we're pretty immortal with this. We're going to get away with it. There's no one in the freeways. There's no camera. Nothing. We're going to keep doing this until they stumble, and a guy like you gets the clue and gets them.
Norris told us another thing I thought was interesting. They had studied cops. They knew cops pretty well. And he said, we know cops. We stayed out of the big city. We didn't go anywhere near sheriff's territory, and we didn't go into L.A. He said, the reason we didn't was because we know if an L.A. cop stops you, this is back in these days, they're going to get you out of the car, shake you down, and search the car. Same with the sheriffs. He said, but in these small beach cities, they're going to write you a ticket and let you go. He said, so we stayed out of the big cities and the sheriff's territory.
That's a great point. That's a great point because
insight, that's pretty.
Yeah. And Randy Kraft, another one of the freeway killers who's notched about 67 killings, when they finally pulled him over for a traffic violation, he had a body in the car. Yeah, and it's not like they found it right away. I mean, it took a little bit to get him out of the car, and then the other guy notices something in the passenger seat. So you're exactly right there.
Originally, they thought he was asleep. They thought he was sleeping.
A dead body, Kato. Another murder victim.
Tom was talking about Bonin. It's Bonin, who got caught. But that was the case that you mostly worked on. Am I right, Bob?
Right.
So
yeah, that's right.
I know that we had talked earlier. You were talking about how you had some sort of clue, so you put surveillance on him. And I always wonder, because I see so many films, how does surveillance work? How do you make sure that you're not seeing the surveillance? What is the steps of people working surveillance? Because you kind of know, because we talked about it, how they surveilled Kohlberger in one of our earlier shows. How do they do it? Where do they hide out? Is it binoculars in a tree?
Well, they might. First of all, they dress for the area they're going to be in, as a rule. It's casual dress. The cars you would never know as police cars. They're very, very discreet. Their cars are equipped with other equipment that helps them. So, for instance, they had foot mics, so they still have both hands on the wheel, work the radio, and they can use the mic and be able to talk with a microphone on the visor. They all have binoculars. As far as surveillance, they have always used 5 or 6 cars as a rule. They knew how to parallel. One might be behind them. They used the cars in between. You never wanted to be right bumper to bumper, so they knew enough to stay back. And then it'd be cars each side paralleling on side streets. If a car was behind them for maybe a couple miles, they'd pull off and another one would take its place. They had ways to make one headlight go out so the car would look different from the front. They had all kinds of little tricks. And they had handheld radios that they used. And so they'd go on foot if it was necessary. If they get into a residential neighborhood, for example, they couldn't follow them right into the driveway. So one of them, the passenger would get out on foot, hide in the bushes, whatever it took, and use a handheld. And then they'd set up around it with one point man, and they either put them to bed, or if they moved again, they would know to jump on them again. And it's quite a sight when you work with these guys, how good they are at what they do.
Yeah, it's an art form. Yeah. I mean, if you think about it, it really is. Wow, what a fascinating career story. Yeah. We've hit these 2 big ones. We could go on and on and on, but I want to talk about a couple other ones because, Bob covered these. They maybe didn't get a lot of the headlines, but they're fascinating. And they're in his book too. The book that Tom Lange and Bob wrote together, The Dirty Business of Murder. It was so well done. I think this one started on page 113, if I remember. And this is the leather jacket, leather jacket murder. Okay, let me get it here because I studied this one, the leather jacket murder. And Kato, the reason this one is significant, I think this was 1970, somewhere around there. I'll let Bob fill in the blanks, but it was like the beginning of the Bloods and the Crips, right? Because before that, fist fights, was really how these gangs settled their scores and things like that. And they were more battling like motorcycle gangs and things like that. But this one it took place in front of a huge crowd at the Palladium in Hollywood. It was actually Soul Train. Did you know that, Bob? That was the concert at the Palladium.
Yeah, I knew it was a concert. We knew it was a concert. It was March of '72. It was one of the first cases I handled, and my partner lived quite a ways out, so I was the first one there. And I mean, we had a crowd of probably 5,000-6,000 people with a body in public view. And when I pulled up, they had a suspect in one of the black and whites. They had somebody in their car, and I just had to protect the scene until my partner got there. It was to manage a scene like that and to keep everybody back. I just told the sergeant at Hollywood Patrol, I said, don't release anybody. Keep them all here. I need them all to keep this crowd back. And of course, they're yelling at us, a lot of nasty comments. They didn't like cops to begin with. But yeah, those are tricky because you got a public view thing. You can't put anything over the body. You don't want to destroy any evidence. So we tried to put up a little barrier around the body that was near the sidewalk. Young kid. The sad part is, it wasn't even his leather jacket. He was just defending a buddy of his, but he ended up getting beat to death.
Yeah, that's interesting because this kid's name was Robert Ballou, 16 years old, right? And his dad was a famous lawyer. I think his dad was a civil rights lawyer. But what's interesting, Kato, is he was killed and he was wearing a green suit. He wasn't wearing a leather jacket. His buddy was wearing the leather jacket and they tried to take it from him. And then he came by the scene and that's when he got like punched and stomped to death, right? It was a pretty rough way to go.
Yeah, you could even see a footprint on his face where he was. Yeah.
Do you think hey, Bob, do you think did you do the arrest or do you know the guys that got arrested? Because I know a couple of them thought that they were framed or they did some time that they didn't, deserve or something like that. But did you guys get the right killers there? Do you feel?
I'll tell you how it happened. The kid that they had in the black and white, they saw him running from the scene. And we got him in the station. He didn't want to talk to us. He was underage. I think he's 17. And my partner and I, we all took shots at him, trying to get him to tell us, what the hell, why you're running. Couldn't get anything out of him. So I called, because he's a juvenile, we had to call his parents, of course, and couldn't get hold of his parents. So we got hold of his grandmother. The grandmother said, I'll be right down. So the grandmother comes in. By now it's a little after midnight, I think. And the grandma comes in and she goes right up to him and says, you tell these officers what they want to know. You tell them everything right now. And he said, Grandma, she said, you heard what I said. And so he said, it's going to be. And so she took her purse and smacked him with it. And she said, you tell these officers what they want to know. And she hit him 2 or 3 times with the purse. And we just watched it. I mean, it's his grandmother, what the hell. So finally he broke down and told us and started giving us names of who was involved. And he mentioned the Crips. And my partner looked, who the hell are the Crips? They'd never been heard of before. This was like early on with the Crips. And so he's laid out these names. A lot of places he could describe the houses they lived in didn't have a lot of addresses. So we got a lot of general warrants, arrest warrants. And we went down there the next day we had about 8 or 10 officers and made arrests of about, I think initially we had maybe 7 or 8 in custody. And most of them were names that he had given us. And that's kind of how we broke the case.
God, that's amazing because you don't have surveillance video. It would be totally different now. Like you'd have like multiple angles of cameras and you'd see license plates if cars were leaving and things like that. But did it feel like a powder keg though, how this could have happened? I mean, this is Soul Train. This is, you're drawing, a crowd that could be highly charged, right? And there could be some fractions, and things like that.
Powder keg event, yeah.
Yeah, the crowd was definitely charged. And, during this era, there was a lot of problems, a lot of friction between the police and the public, and especially at a rock concert like that. It was a very tense scene. A lot of catcalling and what have you. But we got it done. I don't know how it would have happened today. It might be tough because we weren't quite as restricted as they would be now, as far as making arrests.
But and video surveillance much better now.
We felt comfortable that we got the main. But the thing is, I think what's remarkable about the case is the Bloods were upset because they didn't want any victims who were outside of gang members. They were innocents as far as they didn't want to involve a non-gang member or to do this to a non-gang member. And that's what started the war between the Bloods and the Crips. It went on for years, still going as far as I know.
Yeah, and peaking in the 90s, 20 years later when there was, if you were here in LA back in the 90s, Bob, remember, over by USC and in Watts, helicopters like all night, like with spotlights. It was scary. Like you drive through some of those areas, man, it was rough.
Actually, a film kind of like that was made, because we were speaking a lot about films and screenwriting, was a film called Colors with Sean Penn and Robert Duvall, which is probably, revolved around the Blood and the Crips.
Yeah, it's a great movie and very accurate, I think.
Yeah, that one and Boys in the Hood. When you watch a movie like that, Bob, because you had no time for what Hollywood did with the Wonderland Murders, because you saw it, you lived it. But when you watch movies like that, how realistic is that? And did you guys ever have to go through Compton, Watts, South Central, and I know you're detectives, but would you have to solve murders between the Bloods and Crips and things like that?
Yeah, well, most of those we would work in concert with the gang detail because they had the. So yeah, we would work with the gang details. But yeah, I went into Watts many times. They had what they called the jungle near Wilshire, where there's the projects. Even a black and white would never go in without backup. There were some dangerous areas, and Jordan Downs and all the South End projects. Cops had to be very careful in there. It was like they had their own city in there, and cops weren't invited. Even if cops were there on a legitimate investigation, they weren't welcome.
Oh, not and unsafe too, right? I mean, it was just very, very dangerous. Michael Conley, his books, and obviously you and Tom were in that great docuseries he did for Prime on the Wonderland killings. It was so good, Bob. You did a great job in that. And I love Michael Conley's books, Kato, because he's such a fan of RHD, Robbery and Homicide Division of LAPD, and these are the elite of the elite, right? And that's what Bob and Tom were in. Just take us back to that day. Like, what is the responsibility of RHD, Robbery Homicide? Is it the most high profile ones, the toughest ones? How do you go about handing out cases with that elite group?
When we rolled on a case, if we rolled on a case, we thought that we may have to take over. It wasn't that we were better detectives. It was that we had the time. If we were assigned a case, we didn't have to get distracted with other cases. We could just work that exclusively. And anything that was high profile, obviously, Kato, one that was fairly high profile. But anytime it's going to be a lot of travel involved, organized crime, celebrities involved, we would normally take them. And our lieutenants would rely on our judgment. What do you think, guys? Should we take this one? Yeah, I think this one's going to be the Pen Pal murder was a perfect example. It was just very involved, and we knew it. So
that's a good setup. That was a good tease. We mentioned this one.
Yeah, tell us about the Pen Pal murder.
You want to go into that one?
Well, here, Bob, real quickly, because you just mentioned, you get the high profile cases. Where were you in '94 for the OJ one? Where were you? Were you involved in any way?
No, I was retired, and as a matter of fact, I was fishing up near Bishop with some friends, and I'm in a restaurant, little border, little small restaurant, and there's an old TV mounted on the wall with no volume. And I look up and I see the famous Bronco during the chase. And then the next time, then I look up again and here's Tom. And I said, what the? So I called Tom.
During the chase? You called him during the chase? Like during a lull?
I said, Tom, what's going on? He said, you haven't heard? And I said, no, I'm up fishing in Bishop. He said, OJ killed his wife and her boyfriend. I said, no shit. I said, you think you got him? Is it a good case? He says, well, I wish all our cases were this good. And that was Tom's attitude from the beginning.
Famous last words, huh? Yeah. Oh my God. If we only knew. Hey, Bob, congratulations on being the only person on planet Earth that didn't know what was going on at that point. You're out fishing,
reeling in a bass.
I mean, that had to be surreal. And then you hear your partner's voice talking to OJ.
No, he sees it. No volume on the TV. He sees Tom. He's looking, goes, wait a minute, that's Tom Lange.
God, that's too much. And Tom, the way he describes this story too, Bob, is he's in the precinct, and he just said he picked up a phone and called him. And he answered. They had his number, and he answered. Then he called him back. It's just incredible.
Very difficult. Tom was a ballsy detective. We worked well together because we both thought the same. We used to laugh and say, when we show up at a crime scene, we don't have to do a lot of conversation. We know what each of us are going to do, and we just had a mindset between us that we were very successful in our cases. I think because of that.
Well, yeah, 100%.
It's almost like a married couple, isn't it? A little bit. I mean, you have to have that type of
simpatico,
almost that intimacy where you just know each other's thinking, you know your strengths, because you could bring some levity to this. I would imagine. Tom's by the book, very straight laced. Bob, you big personality, you can just tell. But ultimate professionals, both of you guys.
Yeah. By the way, Tom, I love Tom. We did a speech together, and we had so much fun with him and Linda, his wife. We were talking about. I guess Hollywood, sort of like writing Michael Conley, of course, from his Bosch series. And I'm reading about you, and I go, my God, you got to meet, I'm sure, Harrison Ford, Josh Hartnett. You did Hollywood Homicide, a feature film. This is not a B-level film. This is major cast. This is major budget on a film. Any stories from that?
I got a shot that was almost unbelievable, and I don't know if you want me to go into that.
Yes.
I want to hear a story about that one.
Well, let me tell you how it started. I met Ron Shelton through another party, and he said, you have to meet Ron Shelton. He said, you guys would click. And so he took me to Ron's office, and Ron and I chatted. And Ron said, I have an offer for 2 movies right now. One is based in San Francisco, and one's in L.A. He said, and I've never done a cop movie. He said, I'm a sports guy. He said, so I want somebody who could really help me with a movie. I said, I can do that. What's the one in L.A. about? He says, well, it involves a division, robbery, homicide, and surveillance. I said, take that one. I know that case. I know that. That's my
world.
Yeah, that's my wheelhouse. So he said, okay. So he took the dark blue case with Kurt Russell, and I met Kurt. Kurt and I clicked. Such a phenomenal guy. I mean, and as an actor, he's tremendous. But while we're doing the movie, I'm on the set every day. Kurt didn't need a lot of technical advice. He played a cop 2 or 3 times, and he was Wyatt Earp. I mean, come on. So during that, all the conversations Ron and I had, spending every day together for 3 months, I told him a lot of stories. And I told him about Hollywood, working Hollywood Homicide. And I told him I was a real estate broker on the side. He says, well, you did real estate? And I said, well, when I could. I said, but I didn't have a lot of free time. He said, I like it. He said, did everybody have second jobs? I said, yeah, a lot of cops had second jobs, working shoplift details. And he says, I can sell that. I like that. He says, we can't write this. We don't get credit. Because Ron and I rewrote a script. Originally it was, who wrote LA Confidential?
I know this one. Curtis.
No.
Yeah,
I'll give it to you guys when you.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Then David Ayer rewrote it, and then Ron and I went through it, and he asked me to add my 2 cents to it. So he said, we're not going to get credit for this one. He said, but we will the next one. So that's when he liked this idea of cops having 2 jobs. And so we started pitching this concept of Hollywood detectives and an old cop and a younger cop. We had 4 studios that wanted it. They were kind of fighting over it, but they were slow in getting back to us. So Ron said, you know what? He said, I'm tired of waiting. He says, let's take it over to, I can't remember the producer's name, buddy of mine. Let's talk to him. He says, you give him a couple C stories, and then I'll break down how the story's going to go. I said, all right. So we're sitting in there. We go into pitch meeting, and Ron, I tell him the story of something to do with Hollywood. And he says, you know what? He says, I've got Josh Hartnett. He says, I just did Black Hawk Down with him. He says, I might be able to get Bruce Willis for the older cop. He's already talking about doing the movie. And Ron started laying out how it was going to, how the script was going to go. Before we got back to Ron's office, his business affairs people were already on the phone to cut a deal with us. And we didn't have the older actor yet. And so about 2 days later, my manager called me and he said, hey, Bob, are you sitting down? I said, yeah. He said, we got Harrison Ford. It's the first time Harrison ever committed to a movie without a script. We didn't have a script. So now the heat was on. We had 6 weeks to put together our first.
That's great. Black Hawk Down was a big hit, and you go from Josh Hartnett to Harrison Ford, and Bob's going, my God, I was just solving a crime, and now I'm gonna be accepting an award on the red carpet.
I told my wife I thought she was going to pass out when I told her that. In fact, it was funny when I first met Harrison, we were sitting in Ron's office. They were having a meeting. Harrison comes running out. He says, "Hey, Bob, I'm Harrison." But I said, "I know who you are." He said, "Would RHD take a case like this, or would it be with a division keep it?" I said, "No, RHD could take this case." Okay, thanks. He runs back in, and then from there we put the whole script together. And I was writing. I had a place out at Lake Havasu. I was sitting on my boat writing, and Ron was in his place writing, and we're on the phone 8 hours a day, putting it together. And then in the middle of all this, Ron gets an offer to rewrite Bad Boys 2. He says, "Hey, Bob, I got a problem." He says, "I've got a deadline to rewrite Bad Boys 2. He says, "I'm going to have to leave this up to you. You got to write." He says, "Listen, the second act is the hard part. The first act, once you start on that," he said, "and the third act is going to be the chase." He said, "If you want, start on the chase." He says, "You know the area and everything." So I started working on it on the third act. So by the time Ron had wrapped up the Bad Boys script, then he jumped on it. Now we're, every day putting this thing together. And unfortunately, we had it originally. The tone was kind of a Lethal Weapon kind of tone, an R-rated. But Josh was such a heartthrob for these teenage girls. They wanted to keep it as a, PG. And so a lot of things changed and it softened. And Harrison was the 800-pound gorilla. There were a lot of things that he didn't like. He's kind of a
force of nature,
conservationist and environmentalist.
Okay. Oh, don't run over that tree.
My opening scene was we were going to kill a deer, and he didn't like that at all. So we made some choices, but anyway, I got to work with Harrison Ford, and I was on the set every day with him. Brilliant actor. We had a lot of fun together. I mean, and he was going through a lot of bad stuff at that time because his divorce was not active, which wasn't completed yet. And he and Kalista, of course, were the flavor of the week.
Right on. Still together.
This is a great story.
This is before
what a great story. And I love the Hollywood.
Before he crashed his plane in a golf course.
Yeah.
Hey, Bob, the funniest thing about this is you're talking about cops that have side jobs. And here's an ex-cop detective that his side job is writing a Hollywood blockbuster, screenwriter, like literally writing a screenplay. I mean, hey, also there were rumors that Harrison Ford and Josh Hartnett didn't get along. Could you see that on the set?
I never saw it on the set, but there was parody involved here. Because I know one day one of the producers got Harrison a really nice a bike, a mountain bike to ride around on the set. And Josh came to me and he said, "Hey, Bob, what is this bullshit that Harrison gets? Do I get a bike?" And I said, "Yeah, let me look at that." So I went to the producer. I said, "I think you better get Josh a bike. He's not happy." So I had to go Josh a bike.
I would have said, Josh, no, you get to kill a deer.
Josh, you get a Hot Wheels. How's that? You can have a Hot Wheels. We'll let Harrison Ford have the bike. I mean, relax, kid. His career kind of fell off a cliff for a while after that, which is interesting. But he was a hot actor back then.
I've seen him lately, though. He's kind of making.
Oh yeah. And by the way, he got to actually be in a film, a lead with. Since you were talking about Bruce Willis doing that, because he did Lucky Number 11, and that was him and Bruce Willis. So everything kind of came around that
Full
he
circle.
got to work. He's going to work with Willis. He probably wanted. He goes, but he ends up working on something else. Tom, that is the Hollywood story, or should I call you Summertime?
Yeah, I'll go with
calling back to a.
That's my code name.
Yeah.
That's my code name.
This is great.
By the way, it was Curtis Hanson that wrote L.A.
I
Confidential.
said Curtis.
Okay,
I was right.
Yeah. Wow, we haven't touched.
But that movie, it opened a lot of doors for us, and it didn't do great at the box office, but they got their money back. It did really well in Europe. I mean, I'm still getting residuals.
Oh wow, this is great.
Bob, everybody knows that movie. Everybody knows that movie. Come on. I mean,
anytime heard in the news.
I mean, you have a bidding war. You have a bidding war with your first movie.
Yes.
Talk about getting thrown right into the fire. I love it.
And working with
it was amazing.
Snake Plissken.
The head of the studio, Paramount. We pitched it to her. She said, "God, I love this, guys," and she said, "Let's do it." And we waited for a week, and we find out she went on vacation. So that just Shelton off, and so then we went Regency, I think it was. And he loved it, and he said, "Oh, are you going to have stuff like that in L.A. Confidential with Lana Turner sitting there in the Chinese restaurant, and they think she's a prostitute?"
Yeah,
you remember?
Yeah, of course.
He said, "You going to have stuff like that in the movie?" I said, "Yeah, we are." He says, "Let's do it." And another one, never heard back from him, and that's when we ended up going with Joe Roth, and Joe immediately saw the potential. And in fact, Bruce Willis was working on that movie. Didn't do so well. It was something I forget. But
I know which one you mean. Where he
the war film, right?
That was the one in Pittsburgh or something, I think. But I'm trying to think of.
No, the Something with the Sun was a war film, I think, where the word.
I think
sun,
it was.
Yeah, it was. I can't think of the name. I think it actually shot in like the Philippines or something.
Yeah, I was kind of looking forward to working with Bruce Willis, but it was still with Harrison. How are you going to go wrong with do your first movie? With
good stuff.
That's classic. Are you ever in LA? Do you come back?
Yeah, I still have I have family here and friends, so I'm back and forth 3 or 4 times a year.
Gosh, we got to try to get you in here.
Yeah,
we'll bring Tom in.
We'll do a thing with the round table,
the
square table, drink.
Just turn you guys loose. Just hear back in the day. Hey, by the way, who is the good cop and who is the bad cop during interrogations? You and Tom.
I guess I had to play the bad guy. I enjoyed that.
I like it.
Man, we got to hear some of those stories next for sure. Would you come back on?
quite a few of those moments with Wonderland.
Bob, yeah. Tom just was asking if you'd come back on. I would love to have you back on when you're not fishing or taking care of the dogs or any. But you were great,
Bob. We barely scratched the surface because, like you said, there were some interrogations involved in the Wonderland case, and there's more to that story that we could get to on another episode.
We're gonna do it with Tom and Bob, even if we have to Tom in here, whatever. But it's so good. Great to have you on.
I'll tell you. Aside from the books that we wrote, my granddaughter, who is she has a rock group, she just found out Marilyn Manson. They hired her and her band to open for him in Europe, so she's pretty excited about that.
What's the band name?
Dead Posey is her group.
All right. I used to do radio. I know all. She must be, I guess, the alternative goth rock, I bet.
Yeah. It's goth music and kind of fits in with Manson's thing. But she insisted that I have a website, and I never had one. So she set up the whole thing for me. HollywoodDicks.com.
Love it.
HollywoodDicks.com.
We're going to put it on screen right now.
I love it. We're going to do that. We're going to put the books, where to get the books, everything. And Tom's writing it down there.
Yeah.
I've got to go to a 4:30 meeting.
Okay, yeah, he's got to run. Hey, and we got to run too, Bob. But real quickly, man, your career could never happen again. You had to work in the time that you did, in the place that you did, with the people that you did. And obviously, you make luck, right, and having these other opportunities. But man, you're a master storyteller, number one. But if you were a rookie on the force right now, you'd have no shot for this type of career. It's unbelievable how law enforcement has changed, how the world has changed, how Hollywood has changed since you got out here.
Yeah, what are the odds of all this kind of falling in place? Tom and I working together, being handed the big cases that we were handed. I don't know what the odds are against that, but
yeah,
man.
And that's a question that we'll get into another time. But I want to see how you started your career, and then you're going into seeing the changes with every year of technology and how you guys had to adapt every year until I think you retired in 94 or 93. But just seeing the change in the department, and you went through everything.
Yeah, I left a little. But anyway. Well, have me back. I loved it.
Hey, Tom, you or Bob, you had to be watching what Tom was doing during the whole OJ thing, and you would have thought, I'd be in the middle of all of this if I hadn't retired. I mean, it would have taken over your life.
I'll tell you something that most people don't know. I worked a side job with OJ. He was a guest speaker at an event out in West Hollywood, and me and 3 other homicide detectives were invited as security for the thing. And we met OJ, and we posed with pictures. I have pictures of me with OJ.
Yes.
And Tom was supposed to work that, but one of his kids was sick or something, and he couldn't make it, so we had to get a replacement. If Tom was in that picture, it would have been a mistrial.
You're exactly right. It would have been. Or else he would have recused himself from it or something, right?
Yeah. I mean, can you imagine that defense team?
That's just an amazing story.
Because it had to be like a happy photo. You guys are all posing, having, laughing or smiling.
Yeah, OJ was super pleasant, fun with, nice guy. Well, Kato knows.
Yeah, he's a charismatic person, the whole.
Yeah.
Wow. That's an amazing story to end this with. All right. Well, consider this part 1 of hopefully many that we do with you. But this was awesome. Thank you so much, Bob. Really appreciate
Thanks
it.
Thanks for having me on, guys. I really enjoyed it.
Okay. Bob, you're the man. And what's the name of the band again? Dark Posey?
Dead Posey.
Dead Posey, even better. And don't turn off your computer. Go to the bathroom, catch a fish, because it's got to load. So you can leave the computer. I mean, you can leave the room, but you have to keep it on for a little bit, and it'll say 100% complete.
Yeah, I'll text you when it's loaded. Bob, thanks so much, man. Really appreciate it.
I'm going to call Tom Lange after the show and just say, Tom, Bob rules, baby.
Hey, I knew this was going to be good. I had no idea it was going to be this good. And load us up with the comments. This is as good as it gets when you have somebody that has that type of memory, that is involved in that many high-profile cases, and then to think of the Hollywood connections.
And Tom, you and I know what it's like to pitch a show and everybody goes, we love it, we love it, we love the show, and then you never hear again from them, and it's sort of like,
I know,
oh come on.
And then he does it, and it's
Hollywood.
up on. He's got 2 of the biggest actors of the time,
Joe Roth, and just
I know. Okay, load us up with comments. Make sure you check out our membership. 3 platforms. One of them is going to work for you. I guarantee you. Listen to our audio podcast as well, because you'll pick up things that you haven't picked up from here. That was good. That was good.
Great.
And then you want to tell them who we have next? This is going to be good, too. Our next guest.
Ann Schwartz?
Yep.
Annie Schwartz. And by the way, she's the journalist out of the Milwaukee Journal, where I grew up. And, I subscribed. I even had the paper route for a while. She's the first person to walk into Jeffrey Dahmer's after the murders, and she's the crime scene with the police when they enter him. She's the first one to get in as a reporter. And not only that, went to jail, visited Dahmer. Mm-hmm. We're going to find out this stuff. It's incredible what she's going to tell us that you will not believe.
Yep. That's our next episode. She's a great storyteller, and she's got stories to tell. And then Frank Salerno, Hillside Stranglers, coming up later on in November. All right, this was fantastic. Zeus, you got to love this, right? Way to represent the Dodgers. He was at the parade today. Dodgers, oh my God,
all right,
that was
now
so
enough
exciting.
of the Dodgers.
Sorry,
no
Kato,
more. I'm
you've
leaving.
lived here for 4
leaving.
years. Follow a winner. I'll let you get on the Rams bandwagon. Forget the Packers. They stink. We live in L.A. It's L.A., baby. I love L.A.
That hurt.
Get that in your head.
That hurt to do.
For the one and only Kato Kaelin, I am Tom Zenner, Tom Zenner Scandal, and I will see you with Kato very, very, very soon.